Hey everyone, Irene Lyon here. Welcome to this video, to this channel, and to this entire world of healing trauma, nervous system health, and all things neuroplasticity. I'm going to talk to you today about capacity. So building capacity within the nervous system and building capacity within the somatic systems, which is basically our body. And this is a large topic, and I'm going to hit on some key pieces. Please know that this is not going to cover everything around this topic. But one of the reasons I wanted to make this video is in many of my other videos, I will talk about how we need to build capacity within ourselves so that we can naturally, organically release trauma, so trapped survival stress, but also so that we can be with what's happening around us in current time now and going forward. I'm going to start with an example that is not within the healing trauma fields, but it is in the healing fields, the health fields. So if we think about fitness and the capacity to have aerobic fitness, muscular fitness, strength, agility, power, all the things that go with a healthy human physical body. This was my expertise. It still is, I suppose. In my 20s, I did my master's in exercise science and my bachelor's in exercise physiology. So this was my main thing for quite a while. But if we think about exercise, if I say to you, if you wanted to build up the capacity, the ability to, let's say, climb up a mountain to go for a hike, or to run a marathon, or to swim across the lake in the summer, my sense is you know that if you don't have the physical fitness on board to do that whole piece of a distance, you would need to build up your fitness capacity. You would need to build up your aerobic capacity, your ability to get oxygen into your body and expel the waste products of exercise and basically metabolism. Same with strength, right? I would never take someone, a client of mine when I was in fitness, who has never lifted any weight and say, okay, go into the squat rack and let's see you pump out 100 pounds on your back, squatting or lunging or deadlifting or anything like that. That wouldn't happen. We would start slow. We would start small. We would start with movement teaching. Can the person even do the movement properly first before we load any weight on? So I use this example in fitness and in exercise to just sort of give you a little taste of, you might know what capacity building is in other aspects. And so as I switch gears to the nervous system and building up somatic capacity, what I'm going to first start with is, in order to heal the old traumas in our system that are stored, the somatic stress, the memories that are trapped within our physiology, in our tissues, the fear, the stored up fright, the stored up emotions, the shame that we might carry within our cells due to past abuse and adversity. All these things that maybe you know you are carrying, and that's why you're here watching me in this channel. There is this knowing that there is stored old stuff, very technical word. I don't always like to just say trauma. I like to be very specific. Stored survival stress. So these are these fight, flight, and freeze responses that our body had to go into in the past, usually when we're young, but it doesn't have to be when we're young. We have something bad happen to us. We mount these survival reactions, fight, flight, freeze. And then because we don't have enough capacity or understanding of what's going on, we shut them down. We do go into this more freeze, shock, collapse, don't feel it, numb it out, dissociate from it, distract ourselves, all the things to not be with the internal physiology that is on fire and is saying danger, danger. So I wanted to just start with talking about capacity from a fight, flight, freeze perspective first. So let's just say you're in that boat where you know that you've stored up some old stuff, and there's so many types of old stuff. I won't get into that today. but you know that there's stuff in there. And I say we have to build the capacity in our nervous system and in our somatic systems to be able to work this stuff out, to be able to uncover it. What that means is we are helping our systems. We're learning in real time how to be with current day sensation, current day stimulus that might stress us a little bit. So one of the hallmarks of somatic work isn't necessarily going into the memories, because sometimes there might not be any memories. This is what happens when we've had pre-verbal trauma, early developmental trauma. There's no cognitive representation of, I had that accident and I almost saw my mother die in it, but she didn't, thank goodness, etc. There's no cognitive declarative memory, these early experiences that maybe we had. And so there might not be a memory, and that's okay. But one way to build up capacity, this somatic and nervous system capacity, is to get better, is to get more experienced at feeling our internal systems in the here and now. So one of these things might be something like, how can I sense my body when I get a little scared in current day? Do I notice that I completely black out and go blank and I can't think? Or the flip side, I feel my heart rate go up and I think I'm going to crawl out of my skin, or I have butterflies in my stomach, or my throat starts to clench, or I get flushed and hot and I start to sweat, or I start to shake and I shiver, or I get a headache, or I get a pain through my spine that I know happens, but I don't really pay attention to it. Or it might be my digestion goes off. So I keep saying these pieces because it's not a one size fits all. You have to get to know what's happening in your somatic, your body system, under regular daily stressors, so that you can start to understand the old stuff that's trapped from years ago, last year, 10 years, 50 years ago. Okay, so this is kind of the first piece, is building somatic and nervous system capacity means being able to be with what we're feeling and sensing in the current moment and getting really good at it. It might mean working with a somatic practitioner to help you uncover that. It might mean doing my programs and courses to help you uncover that. I'll go over a few ways that you can do that, either free or paid at the end of this video, just so that you have somewhere else to practice after this and have a blueprint, if you will. But we want to get better at knowing what's happening now in our body in this moment. By doing that, we build capacity to be with our internal physiological sensations and what's going on. The fancy word for this is interoception. Interoception, the perception of our internal environment. This has become a really hot topic in the fields of neuroscience. And it's something that I work with daily with my clients, with my students, with myself. But it's as simple as just noticing, oh, I've got some butterflies in my belly, or I'm feeling a little hard to breathe, or all those other things I just mentioned. Now, the key when we feel these things is we need to be with them and respect them and honor them. And it might be just 2 minutes of pausing and noticing. Now, the interesting thing is when we pause and notice what's happening, we also have to monitor whether or not we get completely consumed and go down a bit of a spiral into like doomsday. We don't want to do that either. And I'm talking a little more advanced here, but this is where learning a few more skills that are a bit more specific through, again, a practitioner or a course or program are important. But let's just say you're feeling something that's really intense. In that moment, you have to make a choice point. Can I continue to be with this intense thing, this scary thing, and stay present and connected in the here and now? It is this date. My name is Irene. I'm looking outside. My kitchen's over there. I can feel my feet on the ground, and I'm going to continue to feel this heart that's just pounding. If for, let's say, whatever reason, this pounding is so intense and you're starting to feel yourself ramp up even more or ramp down and start to shut down, that's where you know that your capacity, so listen very carefully here, your somatic and nervous system capacity to be with this thing that's coming up, this old survival stress, this fight flight energy, because that's usually what this is, usually, not always, but usually, you then know that your capacity isn't quite big enough to ride out this wave. I often say to my students, the tsunami wave of survival stress. You would not surf a tsunami wave until you know how to swim and surf and tread water and be underwater and hold your breath, all these things. So if you know that you can't surf that wave, that is where you then have to pull yourself out. And it's not about distracting yourself, but it's about going to a resource, going to something that you know will help you come out of that stress. Maybe it is calling a friend, maybe it's listening to some music, maybe it's watching a funny video, maybe it's some containment exercises or squeezing, feeling the body, touching the body, maybe it's getting up and going for a walk. You have to start to build your resource list of healthy, helpful options so that when you feel that your capacity isn't there to be with that big thing, you can default, you can shift gears to something that's resourcing, that's good, that then allows your system to come down a little bit. Now, the hallmark of nervous system work at this somatic level and healing trauma at this level is actually being able to be with these big tidal waves. I'm using a lot of water metaphor here, tidal waves of stored fight, flight, and freeze, so that we can release them and get them out of our system. The fancy word would be deactivate old procedural memories that are stored in the body. These memories get trapped when we can't deal with them because we didn't know how to. Maybe when we were young, we weren't taught how to, or we were so young that we didn't even know they were happening to us and our body was just going into a shutdown and a collapsed state to protect. So this ability to build capacity as an adult in this day and age means being with the physiology and the sensations and everything that comes with our bodies and actively accepting, kind of in some ways, the decision, yes, I want to work on feeling the tough stuff that might be popping up, and I'm not going to do something to pull myself out of it unless, and this is where this gets trickier and a little more skillful for you, is to go, okay, this is my threshold. I'm going to pull myself out. I can't ride that tsunami anymore. I'm now going to go into the life raft, sit there, drink my warm cup of tea, listen to some music, read a book, whatever it might be, and bring myself down in the way that I know helps. I was working with someone the other day, just real quickly. Friend was having a little bit of something going on. I won't go into the details, it's not important. And what I noticed is when I had her start to notice this flutter in her body, it was intense. There was this immediate breathing. She went into a very controlled state of breathing to try to dissipate the intensity. Now, if I didn't know her better, I would have let her continue to do this, because maybe her system didn't have the capacity to be with this big physiological reaction that was happening. But I know her really well, and I said, you know, what would it be like to not breathe in this controlled way and just let your breath be shallow? Just let it do its thing. And what occurred was that she was able to be then with that intense thing that was happening inside. It was able to hit a sort of thermostatic reset, and then it came out the other side, and then she had a shift in her physiology that was quite pronounced. Now, like I said, I know her really well. I knew that she had the capacity to be with this. I was there with her, albeit it was over a WhatsApp call. But I say these two scenarios because some of you might not be able to yet, I'm going to say that yet, very important, to be with an intensity. And that's where I would say, if breath work works to help calm you down, great. And so how do you know whether or not you're ready to kind of stick with that intensity? You have to test it. You have to trial it out. You kind of have to dip your toe in a little bit and come out and then be like, okay, I'm going to stay in a little longer and see what happens. But you also have to be smart. You don't want to be ego-based with this. One of the reasons I see a lot of folks go too far with this work, and rightfully so, they want to be better. They want to be better yesterday. And this building of somatic capacity takes time. So the other very important piece to building this somatic capacity and nervous system capacity, it's a bit more cognitive, it's a bit more theoretical. That is learning the theory, the deep theory. And of course, I have hundreds of videos here on this channel for you to watch, and lectures and Q&As. But one that I am going to guide you to is called the Healing Trauma series. It's a 3-part video series. It's on my site, completely free and complimentary. 3 videos. The first video goes into it's called a swimming pool and beach ball analogy. This is something that I've been teaching for years. I won't give you the full, but it's of what it is, but it is a very simple way to understand capacity building, stored stress, and why we don't want to add more stress to the system if we can help it. So definitely watch those 3 videos, because that will give you more visuals as to what I'm talking about with this building of capacity, but also more of the education around the fight, flight, and freeze, and also how we store stress and then the repercussions of that. So be sure to watch that. Now, the other reason why education is important and getting more theory on board at a very deep level is so that when we are in a moment of feeling something intense and we're like, this is that thing that Irene was talking about, I'm starting to find myself go a little blank. I can't think clearly. I'm starting to feel my body get really cold. Oh gosh, that might mean that I'm going into a bit of a parasympathetic shutdown of my nervous system, something called the dorsal vagal response of the parasympathetic. Very wordy, I know, but this is an important thing to understand, because it's not a true calming down. It's a slowing down at a very in a shocked way. It is a shutting down because the physiology can't handle something that is intense. I've done many videos on the polyvagal theory, so I'll link them below so you can check those out. Definitely get into those if you've never ever come across this concept of polyvagal theory. Very important to understand. Likewise, let's say a person is feeling increased activation in their body and they're humming and they're buzzing and they feel like their heart's going to explode. And if they understand, okay, this is sympathetic, adrenalized fight-flight energy, and they know that they actually have a lot of capacity, like say my friend did, they might then go into acting that out a little bit. Maybe there's some stored anger and aggression in the system, some rage, some words that just need to get shouted out. Of course, not to harm anyone or yourself, but this would be a higher level of work where if you understand the physiology and you've built up a little bit of the capacity, you can then express perhaps these old fight, flight, anger, wanting to like put boundaries out, all the things that come with our system when it's been wronged and hurt and harmed. And maybe you're like, whoa, this is that opportunity for me to move this out. And I know that I have the capacity to move this energy out. I'm feeling this survival response in my sympathetic physiology. And I'm here in my home. It's safe. It's this day. My name is Irene. I can feel my feet. And I have the ability to stay present and get this out. That is another reason why understanding the theory and the education is super duper important. All right, the other reason why getting better at being in our physiology, building this somatic capacity, this nervous system capacity, is so that we have a more accurate perception, a more accurate neuroception, that's the fancy word, perception of safety or perception of danger. Now, this concept neuroception, it was coined by Dr. Stephen Porges, who also coined the term and developed the polyvagal theory that I just mentioned a second ago. When we have had a lot of bad, scary things happen to us, or even just really insidious traumas that are just kind of always there, our perception of what is safe and not safe, or dangerous and not dangerous, gets thrown off. It kind of gets skewed. And so a common thing people ask is, Irene, how can I trust my intuition when I never knew what was to be trusted in the environment? You know, and so the answer to that is practice. It goes back to trial and error. But when we can build up more capacity, so this is going to thread back to the first piece, when we can build up more capacity within our physiology, the somatic body, we can be with more of these fight, flight, freeze responses. When we start to do that, we are becoming more accurate with what's actually inside as opposed to bypassing what is inside. It then allows us to process these old stored things that have been lingering on forever, around forever. We release them from our system. And when that occurs, we free up space. We actually have more of us on board, more of our true nature on board, and not the stored past icky stuff that we've been carrying around. When we start to build up this capacity and we get this old junk out, our perception of what is actually safe or what is actually dangerous gets better. It gets more accurate. And it's about as much as I can say, because the only way to actually get this is to start to experience it yourself. And just like I mentioned a second ago, it's trial and error. It's knowing when to listen and maybe test some things. Like, actually, I think today I'm gonna drive this way. I'm feeling this really curious desire to go a different route to get to the grocery store. And perhaps in that there is something that you see that you never knew was there and it was really important for you. These are these little things that occur when our perception of the environment becomes more accurate, and our perception, I should say, of our intuition becomes more environment. It actually leads us into places and spaces where we find things that are for us, that we need to find, people we need to meet. And then, of course, in going with that intuition, let's call it our sixth sense, our gut impulse, our gut sense, we are also avoiding things that might be dangerous for us. I know that sounds a little more cosmic and out there, but I can tell you, whenever something bad has occurred to me, recently at least, it's because I'm not following my gut. I'm not following my intuition. I've put my cognitive brain ahead and been like, well, no, that doesn't make sense. Cognitively, I'm going to go do this, and then something bad happens, right? Obviously nothing deadly because I'm still here, but we get these little hints and we have to learn from them. So one other reason to build up this somatic capacity, and it kind of is a default, this nervous system somatic capacity, is it gives us some more accurate capacity, there's that word again, to know what we need to go towards and what we need to pull away from. It's very, very indicative of also what we maybe did get or did not get when we were young with our primary caregivers. Were they listening to us? And this goes back to how all of this started in the beginning, and I won't get into all the developmental pieces because I have many other videos on that, but how we are listened to when we're young, how we're attuned to, how we're allowed to feel our bodies and be connected with in a gentle way, or maybe not a gentle way. All of that will determine our capacity to regulate as human beings, to be with ourselves, to be with our physiology. But if we had an upbringing where our caregivers never allowed us to fully let something cry because we hurt ourselves, and every time we fell, and we scraped our knee, we were told to just get right up and not feel it, and we're big and strong and don't feel that, don't cry. I did a video on what functional freeze is. I go into a much more in-depth detailed description, so be sure to watch that if that concept is new to you. But if we didn't have that capacity to learn, or that ability, I should say, to learn when we were young, we're not going to know how to feel the difficult stuff because we were just told to not feel it. And we're going to listen to those primary caregivers when we're really, really little because they are our teachers. So as an adult, if you know, to bring it back to kind of a more simple lens here, if you know that you are not allowed to feel all the feelings, to express all the expressions, then this is the work you need to do now, to feel the feelings, to go back to what I was saying at the very beginning of this video. In the current moment now, as an adult, how can you be better at listening to your somatic expressions from the body? Stuff just as simple as listening to when you have to go to the bathroom, listening to when there's pressure in the bladder, when there's pressure in the rectum, when there's gas that needs to come up, allowing these things to come out of the body and do so in a way that's neutral is another way to start to build up our somatic capacity. Okay, the final thing I want to say I should say, ways to start to practice. So if you haven't gone to my site yet, please do. There are so many resources there. There are ebooks, there are audio samplers, so you can actually download a lesson of me teaching for free to help you get guided into this body, but also to the environment. One of the hallmarks of this work, we have to connect to the environment, we have to connect to the internal, and we have to do them both at the same time. When we master this capacity, or this ability, I should say, to be with ourselves in relationship to the environment and other people. As I mentioned also on my site is that 3-part video training series. Definitely get into that. It is a wealth of information, and it'll give you just those ideas as to what this is all about. I get into the research, some more of the science, so be sure to check that out. And then if you want to do a little more with me and get into building more capacity and learning more of the in-depth education, definitely start out with my 21-day nervous system tune-up course. This is available all year round, and you can begin getting some of these more practical somatic tools on board. And then depending on when you're watching this video, once a year we run my program, Smart Body, Smart Mind. This is a 12-week online group program that we've been running for many, many years. In the year 2022, it'll be the 11th time we have run this course. It teaches you everything that I have learned in terms of building capacity with the physiology, with the actual body parts, working with the organs of the body, the stress organs of the body, the kidneys, the adrenals, the brainstem, the guts, all the parts of our body that go into survival mode when we've had a lot of bad, scary things happen to us. There's movement within this program. There's interaction with my team and myself. So that is really kind of the holy grail, if you will, of my online programs and offerings is Smart Body, Smart Mind. The one other thing I will mention that I almost forgot, and then I'll end on this note. When we start to build more capacity within our body and nervous system, we actually can get a bit bigger. And by bigger, I don't mean gain excess body fat. I mean our size can get bigger because we are no longer collapsed in our system. We actually start to build more volume within our lungs, within our pelvis, within our bones. I can no longer wear any of the clothes that I had 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I've had to replace everything. Rib size is increased. And with that, there's just more space inside. And when there's more space inside physically, we can actually bring in more sensation and feeling. Because at the end of the day, our feelings, our emotions are within our sensations, and our sensations are felt from our internal physiology, our viscera, our heart, our lungs, the tissues, all of it. So this has been a little longer today, kind of went in a few different directions, but just to review, building somatic capacity and nervous system capacity, we want this for many reasons. One, to not hold any more stressors in our system, so current day, so we can be in current day and work with what we have to in our day-to-day. But also we want to build capacity at this nervous system and somatic level so that we can heal and release and integrate the old stuff that is trapped in our system and is keeping us either in this fight flight mode or in this freeze mode, or maybe a combo of both. As many of you know, when we're trapped in this mode, this creates a whole host of troubles at the autonomic nervous system level: chronic illness, mental illness, relationship troubles, addictions, trouble connecting with the environment, trouble connecting with our cognitive brain, thinking clearly, being creative. It really is an important piece to get into and to master. So with that said, thank you so much for being here. Be sure to get into those resources I mentioned. Everything I've mentioned is linked below in the Show More section. Take good care, and we will see you next time.